This is the Gospel of Jesus Christ according to St. John, the 18th chapter. Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priest have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am king. For this I was born. For this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." This is the gospel of our Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. "So you are a king?" Pilate asks. Jesus doesn't say yes. He says Pilate has said that. And we are the ones who make that claim on Christ the King Sunday today. But this festival is relatively new. It was only established by the Roman Catholic Church less than 100 years ago. The very first church that was authorized to be dedicated in the name of Christ as King was 1 year later. And the observation of this festival as the last Sunday of the church year only happened in 1970. This is an infant festival. But the idea of Christ as a king is appealing enough that in that short period of time it's gained broad acceptance and observation across the full spectrum of Christian religion. And I'm not certain that's a good thing. I mean, it can be. There's value to be claimed here, but it's risky. For all their good intentions, the prayers and preaching of this day all too easily slip into one of the great demonic lies of our world. That the distinction between the kingdom of Christ and the rulers of this world is who is on the throne of the systems of power, and not the sinful nature of the systems themselves. If we just put Jesus on top of our systems, we think, then it'll all be fixed. And that's not an entirely new hope. That's far older than the festival itself. The worldly institutional church, it has aligned its ideas of Christ's power with the ability to rule this world. Rather often, at least since the rise of Constantine established Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire, and that was almost 1,700 years ago. You see, Pope Pius XI merely established the official festival observation of that long-established desire in 1925. He didn't make the desire. And the festival itself was made with the best and most altruistic intention. Intentions that could perhaps be revived if we just looked at it from a slightly different angle. You see, the Pope served in the shadow of the rising popularity of a nationalist authoritarianism This was the era that would bring Mussolini and Hitler to power. And Christ as king was meant to be the church presenting an alternate vision. And in the best moments, thinking of Christ as king can be just that. It can free us from underneath the suffocating vision of worldly power, liberate us from those who would unite us solely by the fear of a common enemy. The problem is, we are rarely at our best. And even our claims at the name of Christ often are directed at who we perceive to be a common enemy. Our efforts to envision Christ as king all too often, in no way, shape, or form, liberate us from our worst inclinations. Instead, they cage our understanding of Jesus within the limitations of our broken and sinful world. You see, the great and demonic lie of our world is that this vision of Jesus, contained within our power structures, able to work within our understanding of the world, that this is somehow still the true Christ. The logic of the lie is this: if we, by force, place Jesus on the throne of our world, it will have to become his kingdom. And in that framework, in that understanding, we hear Jesus' words to Pilate about what his people would be doing if his kingdom were of this world as a duty. We hear it as an obligation to pick up arms and fight to keep Jesus from being handed over. If his kingdom were of this world, it would be our duty. But if you allow me to jump out of John's telling of Jesus' life to Matthew and Mark's telling of the story, that arrogance, that presumption to tell Jesus how to use his power is exactly what Jesus tells Peter is satanic. Even within John's telling of the story, Jesus flees to the mountains the second he realizes the people will attempt to make him king by force. Jesus' words to Pilate here are in no way, shape, or form a call to arms. They are not a rally cry for the citizens of Christ's kingdom. They are a statement of a profound paradox. Jesus has responsibility for a kingdom over which he is not king. It doesn't make sense. Not by the logic of our world, not by what we call a king, but if he were a king, as we call it, this thing that is at the center of our faith, the arrest, crucifixion, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, would have never happened. Jesus, who is of one being with the creator of all things, doesn't want to be a king. It's too small. And things tend to go catastrophically wrong when we miss that. Pious hands have clutched on to a Bible and cross, while indigenous and First Nations people have been slaughtered over centuries. This vision of Jesus as a worldly king is what oversaw the trial and execution of innocent women in Salem. The gas chambers of Nazi Germany and the lynching trees of the Jim Crow South both proclaimed Christ as king of this world. Historical efforts to place Jesus on the throne and bind him to a national or cultural identity have only ever served Satan. And so some of you may have bought in to the most current push to place Jesus on the throne in these United States, often framed as if we will put him back there, as if Jesus ever deigned to serve as a king of this world. And if that's you, trust me, I understand the inclination. I recognize the authentic love and intention behind the sentiment. But if we think those efforts are going to end any better than any of the other historical efforts to place Jesus on the throne by force, we're missing the point. Jesus refuses to be on the throne of our systems of power. Jesus will not rule over the brokenness of this world. It's too broken to fix. Jesus will create it anew. He refuses to exercise power in any way that our worldly logic would consider to be worth a darn. Even in his time on earth, Jesus refused to be the military Messiah the zealots were calling for, and yet he wouldn't practice the Pharisees' policy of appeasement. They were using the privilege of their power, really, in what they believed was protecting the people under their care from a Roman backlash by striking up an uneasy allegiance with that power. But Jesus had none of that. Jesus will neither battle a military war against empire, nor will he avoid confrontation with the sinful and oppressive power structures it enforces. The thing is, once we've taken away wise diplomacy and military might, there's really not much left for a ruler of this world, is there? There isn't much left to ask from a king. But then again, Jesus didn't want to be made king. So if we want to gain anything good from this proclamation of the reign of Christ, if we really want it to be an alternative vision of the universe, we need to try and shift our thought from exchanging those on the throne for Christ, and instead allow Jesus to redefine for us the very nature of power, the meaning and use of authority. To break down the system itself. You say I'm King Pilate. The only time Jesus bears that title is when he's on the cross. A title is only placed over him as he is sacrificing his very self. And those who put him there, or at least asked for him to be there, would rather it said he was king. Jesus never took the role of a king of this world, but he did show us how power is used. That is the vision. Self-sacrifice is the vision of the ruler in that coming kingdom, that kingdom that comes with or without us. We can pray with boldness that Jesus taught us, that it comes for us as well, but we have no power and authority to usher it in. By Jesus' example, we have been liberated to try and emulate his use of power, though, because we're not kings either, but every one of us has power in some of our relationships. And we can try and use it to usher in what we think is right. Or if we truly do say that Christ is what a king looks like, if we truly do believe that Christ testified to the truth and that true power is exercised as he used it, in those relationships, we are free to lay ourselves down for the neighbor, to love them at great personal risk. And the paradox of that self-sacrifice is that this is the true power of the King above all kings. And maybe we can see that alternate vision after all.